I want to welcome everyone to the South Carolina Libertarian Party debate. We have with us this evening Mr. Gary, Mr. Wrights, and Mr. Pearson, who have been gracious enough to travel from various corners of our country to the city of Columbia, South Carolina this evening. This is November 12th. We're going to have several rounds of questions asked of all the candidates. We're going to begin with 4 minutes time for each candidate to introduce themselves, followed by 5 rounds of questions that the convention committee has come up with, followed by questions from the audience. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes to answer a question. If a candidate feels they need to rebut someone else's question, we will certainly address that. I've been told they've rarely used rebuttal at previous debates, so they did not ask for the ability to rebut every question, so we'll use that as necessary. Again, I want to thank the 3 of you for coming. And Mr. Gary, if you care to begin, you have 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Flood. I'm really excited to be here because I think it's a great time to be a libertarian. When I joined the Libertarian Party in 1977 and told people that I was a libertarian, I got a blank stare. People had not heard the word, they couldn't spell it, and they certainly had no idea what it meant. And we've made a lot of progress in the last 35 years. It's rare nowadays that you don't see the word libertarian or hear it somewhere in mainstream media. Even the Republican candidates are making frequent use of the word libertarian. So I think it's a great time. We're making progress. One of the things I observed early in the party that greatly concerned me was that we would have very spirited and strong candidates running for the nomination for president. And the group that did not succeed in getting their candidate nominated would leave the party. And that's a heck of a way to build an organization when you lose 50% of your membership every 4 years. It's tough, but we've endured and we've done it. A phenomena that I see now recently, more so, is that we attract good candidates, and they have good staff on their own. The biggest problem I see with a lot of them is that they set their expectations way up here on how they're going to do, and on election eve, when they're not quite that high, they're devastated and they don't want to run again, and we don't have them as a candidate additionally, or they go to another party. And it's difficult to build an organization when you're losing your top people every couple of years. But I think we're making progress. The Libertarian Party in the last 30 to 35 years has done more than any other third party in the last 150 years. And we should take pride in that.
Indeed.
We're continuing the good fight for individual liberties, and eventually we will prevail. And thank you for the invitation for being here.
Mr. Wrights.
I want to thank you for having us as well. Don't take lightly the fact that you are important to us, because we are here. You know, South Carolina is just as important as any place else as far as I'm concerned. I'm proud to be in front of you today. I spent a long time in this party. I spoke to you earlier, but what I didn't tell you was my activism in the party. Besides being ballot access director in North Carolina, is where I started. I've held practically every county, state position there is. Outside of a state chair, I was vice chair of North Carolina for 7 years. I've served 3 terms on the national committee, 2 with our colleague, Mr. Flood. Served 2 terms as an at-large member. I served 1 term as the national vice chair. I say all this because my colleague, Mr. Gary, reminded me of something about how we do tend to lose people after each election. I carry 3 people with me throughout my campaign every day. A man named Ron Krickenberger, David Nolan, Fred Childress. The thing these three men have in common, besides the fact that they were all friends of mine and they're no longer with us, they never gave up on the Libertarian Party. They gave their lives and they died working for this party. And that's what keeps me going when, promises aren't kept, or you feel like you're not getting the support that you deserve or should need. And I remember those three men, what each one of them taught me individually. Mr. Krickenberger taught me to not be afraid of how radical our ideas may seem. What's right is right, to speak what is right. David Nolan taught me about the Libertarian Party. David didn't teach me how to be a libertarian. He didn't have to. We both were already libertarians. But he taught me about the history of what I had got myself into. Fred Childress, one of my best friends. Excuse me. He taught me the importance of peace. Being a peacemaker, reaching out to those you don't necessarily agree with on so few issues, as John Wayne so eloquently put it earlier. Disagree with somebody about 1% of something, and you throw away the 90% that's good in that relationship. We have to stop doing that. My slogan is stop all wars. We can't begin to think about stopping the wars outside of a convention hall till we stop the wars inside its walls. Got to stop the wars inside ourselves first. That's where it begins. That's why my slogan on my bumper stickers, my buttons, is I am not at war. That's where it all starts. It's an individual choice. And if enough of us make that choice, they can't have them anymore. Thank you so much for having us here. It's a true honor and pleasure to be before you today.
Mr. Pearson.
I want to thank you also for having us here today. It's very important from the candidate standpoint and from the party standpoint and the public standpoint that we have a chance to air issues. And the reason that I'm running is that I have issues that I want to have heard. My background is that at age 9, I started my first business. I didn't realize it at the time, but I was a delivery boy carrying newspapers around the neighborhood and collecting money. If I didn't collect it, I wouldn't get paid. I'm a high school dropout. I went to the Army, spent 3 years there, went to college and then Harvard Law School. And I have a background, a good legal background, and I've been applying it in the creation of jobs. I created the paralegal field, and there are more than 300,000 people in the country employed today as paralegals. I created another field, and it was licensed, accredited, and student loans, to be the assistant to the owner of a small business. That is the most important career field in the country today, and it would create so many jobs if we could only have the schools teach people technology in order to become employed, instead of taking their money and giving them a college education that doesn't lead to a job. It leads to debt and dissatisfaction, and we have to change the way education is occurring in this country. So I understand this because I lived for 18 years running a post-secondary vocational school, and I understand the importance of that. So one thing is that we can create jobs in America by the simple expedient, believe it or not, of eliminating regulation of payroll for the first 3 employees of any business, so that there are 20 million small business people in America today, self-employed, who don't have a single employee, and we could create millions of jobs merely by declaring that the first 3 employees are free of all regulation. So my message as a libertarian is to deregulate, and I know exactly where we should deregulate. I'm not new to libertarianism. In 1978, Robert Poole, the editor of Reason magazine, had a spotlight featuring me, picture and all, as the entrepreneur of justice. I created a private court system for profit. I have done a lot of things that are libertarian over the years. Creation of jobs is just another libertarian thing that we need to sell to the public. We create it by deregulation. We need to deregulate the raising of capital by small business. We need to deregulate post-secondary vocational education so that there's no regulation. It's really a First Amendment right to teach people, but the government isn't doing that. We have a right to teach people. We shouldn't be regulated. And the requirement with payroll, we should make it easier for small business to hire. And we could have all the jobs that we need in America if we do that. Deregulation is what I am preaching. That's what I'm going to take. That's what I want to have the Libertarian Party acknowledge and be a part of. Thank you.
All right. Take just a second here. Wow, that was quick. All right, in our first round, does the microphone pick me up fine?
Yeah.
Okay. In our first round, we all know if I asked you, should we get rid of war, we'd be in agreement. Should we fix the economy, we'd be in agreement. The question to a lot of libertarians is, how are you going to deliver our libertarian message? How is your campaign? How are you going to get in front of the media? How are you going to get them to pay attention to you? And I guess in that we'll see hopefully some differentiation between how the three of you believe you would operate, what your focus would be in getting the message out. In this round, we're going to give you 2 minutes to speak, and we're going to start this time with Mr. Wrights.
Thank you. One of the main things that we're already working on and that we're going to pursue, we've already raised the capital for this project, is we're creating 30-second commercial spots. Now, the original spots will be geared towards the presidential campaign. And we're working with Doug Craig down in Georgia, matter of fact, as far as getting the spots, which we can get fairly cheaply, as I understand, if we go to the local markets. But the idea is to create this ad so that it's generic, in that the last 10 seconds of it will be you'll be able to edit it. We're going to offer this to all candidates that are running for appropriate offices where whatever the ad is that they want to use would be appropriate for them. They'll be able to edit their own material into the last 10 seconds of it and make the ad their own. And we're going to make this available to all candidates free of charge for the Libertarian Party across the country. And of course, we all know that radio spots and TV spots in small markets can add up if you get enough of them going. And go there and actually work with these candidates on the local level. Those are our most important ambassadors we have, our state and local candidates. That's where the politicians affect your lives the most. Usually are the politicians that are closest to you at home, even more so than our representatives in Washington sometimes. Your property taxes and your zoning laws and annexations and creating expanding their tax bases. That's, a good catch term for them. So we need to work together and get into a market where they're already known because of those local candidates, use those ads, get our message out, and encourage people to come and join the Libertarian Party. Not just vote for us in this one election, but join the party.
All right. Next to Mr. Pearson, I'm just going to repeat how are you going to get the media to pay attention to you and get the message out to the media?
I ran for Attorney General last November. I came in third, and I did not have a single major medium pick me up whatsoever. I did it at a cost of 3 cents a vote, where the mayor, Bloomberg, got reelected at a cost of $174 a vote. I understand the blackout that occurs in the party. I understand it, and I'm trying to deal with it. One of the ways I'm going to deal with it is to create my own series of debates and have it be picked up as if it were part of the national debate. In other words, I urge that every candidate really have some nice-looking debates that we can put up there, but topical. Jobs, war, victimless crimes, but have it be topical, and we can go in depth in that way, far more than any current debate of the Republicans or Democrats is allowing. So we can actually give a lot of information and slip it in to make it look like it's part of the national debate, which it is, but it's just not done by them, it's done by us. So that's one way. I want to have a bus tour, but have it in a few cities or many cities, whatever, but to have the press be invited and to talk about how we can create jobs in that area. We can create jobs easily. And I want to use the Occupy Wall Street people who are clamoring for jobs. These people are the ones that I would have knocking on the doors in the smaller towns and showing them how jobs can be created. We can create jobs. And this is not government at all. This is anti-government. People create jobs, not government. And we ought to organize the people to be able to go in there and get publicity. If we can do that and create jobs and create prosperity in one town in the United States, we could win the election. Thank you.
All right, and next to Mr. Gary again, will you get your message out, get the media to pay attention to it?
That's a very broad question.
Well, you got 2 minutes.
I don't think any of us are under the delusion that we'll have hundreds of millions of dollars like the other two larger parties have. So we need to be very clever about how we get the message out. The internet and cable access. There's Ed Clark in his campaign in 1980 used 5-minute, I guess nowadays we might call them infomercials, but it was cheaper to buy a 5-minute spot than it was a 1-minute spot because they were considered programs instead of advertising. And today we can, if you see the tremendous number of infomercials that are on the cable, I think we do a 30-minute spot and buy one of those time slots. We can do a lot. The dearest thing to my heart in running a campaign is to get on the ballot in all 50 states. There's 3 or 4 states that are real boogers to make, and I would like to generate as much publicity as we can by hitting those states really hard on their petition drives, and then broadcast that. That'll be an access for filming and for media attention.
All right, now before we start the next round, I want to remind everybody here in the room that when I finish my goal is to discuss general background questions that other libertarians around the country watching this may have about the campaigns. Remember, we're going to have an opportunity for you to ask questions. So as we're doing this and you think of an issue that a candidate may have mentioned that you maybe want some follow-up or some clarification on, we'll have some time for you guys to actually get a chance to ask questions. So we're going to go to the next round. We're going to start with Mr. Pearson. The question relates to comments that several people have made. We get to our convention, we have a contentious 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 round selection for president, and at the end we do end up with sometimes a sizable number of people who disappear, go in the woodwork. How will your campaign plan to, for lack of a better word, rally the troops, get people back together, get the party behind you, both those who were your supporters and supporters of others? And this is not a get your opponent to endorse you kind of thing. This is how will your campaign step forward and keep this party together as we go forward through November. Mr. Pearson.
Well, I would like to keep the party together. I don't think that I'm divisive. I might appear to be different, but I'm really trying to apply the principles of libertarianism, so I don't think that my candidacy would be divisive. It just has to be understood. If you understand that I'm not seeking government programs, I'm not seeking government money, I'm really anti-government, and I want the people to be able to cure the problem. I think it's possible for people to create jobs without any government support. And I think that if we apply the libertarian principles, as I'm saying, that we won't have any divisiveness. I don't see where we'll have divisiveness. I think I'm showing a road that the party can take, all of us, the all-inclusives and the rest. And I think that that is my answer to the problem.
Mr. Gary?
In the past, a lot of the divisiveness has been personal attacks by candidates of each other, or if it didn't come directly out of the candidate's mouth, it was through their staff or some manner of. I think we saw some of that in 2008, and I don't intend on participating in anything like that. And I would, if I don't get the nomination, I would encourage my staff, and I certainly myself intend on supporting our candidate. And I would hope that would be of course, that's a good question, is you play nice. You don't alienate half of the party by belittling them and so forth. That's
Good
basically
answer.
it.
Mr. Rice?
There's a difference between the candidates and the party. What I'm doing for the party. I'm not doing this for Lee Wrights. I'm doing this because of a message that I believe is a libertarian message that needs to be delivered. And whoever the candidate is, this should be the message that we use. That's what I'm saying. I mentioned before the 3 men that I take with me every day. They didn't quit the party. I'm not either. I put too much of my time, my effort. I wear this life pin proudly. And it's not just because I gave enough money to get it. It's because I made a choice, as we all do. This is my choice. This is my home. That's why I'm here. Because I'm with my family now. I'm not going to give that up for anything or anybody. I'm not going to encourage my people that want to see me get ahead. I'm not going to allow that either. As far as the best thing we can do is set a good example as a candidate. I mean, I've kind of been through this once already in the last election. Of course, I was campaign manager to the runner-up in 2008. It would have been very easy for both of us to turn our backs and be bitter and say no. But the next day, we both stood for office on the national committee, and we served the next 2 years serving this party on the national committee after we lost that election, because we wanted to set a good example and show people the unity that's supposed to be of a political party. We got enough people after us already. We don't need to be after each other.
Amen.
All right, now, we're going to get converts. Hopefully we're going to get converts. Hopefully you're going to get, whoever our candidate is going to get the message out, and we're going to get new activists. We're going to get new volunteers. How will your campaign seek out and find those potential new activists and get people involved? It's a manner similar to, we have organizations like Campaign for Liberty that have built huge groups of volunteers. How will your campaign be finding and dealing with new converts, for lack of a better word? And we'll start this time with Mr. Gary.
It's kind of overworked, but the internet is by far the best way to find lots of people rapidly. It's and you don't necessarily find them in a political sense. I've made lots of contacts in various networks that I'm involved in that basically have nothing to do with politics. But I have discovered that because my interests are in liberty and in the Libertarian Party, that my other interests, which you wouldn't think are associated with politics, are similar to everybody else's. There's some, I guess you'd call them lifestyle groups that I belong to, that are extremely interested in the Libertarian Party, and yet you would never think of them as approaching them as political. And what we need to do is concentrate on finding the people that already think the way we do, rather than trying to convert people that don't. I think that's the best use of our time. It's and like I said, then the internet can go viral in seconds. We'll make it happen.
All right. Mr. Wrights.
Well, the internet is a good tool, and we're able to use it now better than we have in any other campaign. We were asked at the last debate whether we would be campaigning in all 50 states, and my response to that question was, we already are campaigning in all 50 states. Fortunately, we live in a time when we can go there. Now, I personally believe that our greatest pool of activists are going to be young people. We need young people, because guys like sitting here in front of you are not going to be around here all forever. I mean, I've always felt like that I was helping build a foundation for those that were going to come after me. I'm not foolish enough to believe that in my lifetime I'm going to get everything I want out of government. It's just not likely to happen. But if we don't do what we're doing now and build something for the young people, then there'll be nothing there. And so we need to build a good foundation, give them something to work with, find them and give them a good place to work, because they want to. And this Stop All War message has been coming across very well to the young people. I would say the great majority of the feedback that we've been getting have been from young people. People that, a lot of email I get are from people that can't even vote yet. I mean, 16-year-olds that are doing their research for civic classes or whatever, and it's a wonderful thing. And already, throughout the campaign already, the last 18 months, every time I get one of those, I copy that person to Wes Benedict, our national executive director, so that they can be contacted and about becoming a member. And I encourage them, this is a way to get involved, but go ahead and become a member of the Libertarian Party. We have a message that appeals to people. We don't have a libertarian message, really. We have an American message. We have a message that appeals to a wide range of people, and we just need to be welcoming them in. Let's not, give them reasons to run away from us. Let's welcome them in.
All right. Mr. Pearson.
I think the 99% should be voting for us or with us. And I want to reach the 99%, the Occupy Wall Street 99%. Most of them, or many of them, say that they don't have jobs. They don't have good jobs, and they're complaining about it. We have a libertarian message here of how jobs can be created, but actually we can go into a specific town with a group of maybe 10 Occupy Wall Street people and create jobs. And if we do it in one town, it'll be publicized all over the country, and it'll be a groundswell. It'll be a grassroots approach. See, in a specific town, you can get a viral condition, whereas nationally, it's very difficult to create the viral condition. But in a town of 10,000, with a team of 10 people knocking on each of the 3,500 doors in the town, the homes in the town, you can bring the message to everyone in town and actually create prosperity for the town. I have a website which explains how to do it. If that happens, we're going to be able to get really, truly great, fantastic national publicity. And we can have teams going into many places, and I believe that that is one of the key ways of doing it. But also using blogs. One of the skills that we need in America is blog marketing. Every small business person needs to have a blog marketer. We need to have training there, but we need to use blog marketing in our own campaign. It's marketing. This is what we need to do. And cable access. I'm a member of the cable access group in Manhattan. We just got our new license from New York City, the Time Warner people. So I think we can go through the organizations and use them for our benefit. I suggest that we do that.
All right, thank you. And I think one of the things everyone listening here is getting in, hopefully getting an idea of how you're thinking as a candidate. But the big question to a lot of us is, how will your campaign help and support states downstream? What to be selfish, what are the Carolinas? What's South Carolina going to expect from a Pearson or a Wrights or a Gary campaign? How will you be supporting through your campaign directly downstream candidates? And we'll start, I believe, this time with Mr. Wrights.
Okay. Well, one of the big things in my campaign, and this doesn't affect South Carolina, thankfully, is ballot access. Of course, anyone that knows about my campaign, 10% of all the donations that we collect are dedicated and set aside for ballot access to states and candidates that are harder than we are. Other than that, I think as a presidential candidate, we have to look to the states for help. I mean, we need to go there and be in those states and campaign. But we can't do it the way the other parties do it. I heard Judge Buttrick in Arizona speak on this, and he's absolutely right. With the major parties and their candidates, they're famous people and everybody knows them. And it is value for them to go to the states and have the other candidates run with them. You know, we call it riding their coattails. Libertarians, we have to do things a little different, because our most well-known candidates oftentimes are people right here in the states, the people that run time and time again, that have some name recognition. As a federal candidate, we need to come and find out who those candidates are in South Carolina, Georgia, North Carolina, and campaign with those folks and sort of ride their coattails and let them introduce you to the people they already know and the people that like them. Politics is politics, and an election is basically a popularity contest. Most people in this country vote because they like you. A lot of people vote because they agree with your issues and your platforms. Very few people read a platform. Most voters vote for who they like. And we need to concentrate on that. Find out who the likable candidates are and go and be with them. I mean, it's kind of a selfish way, but we have to do things differently because we are a third party and they make us do things differently. So we have to be more clever.
All right. Mr. Pearson.
I would create a list of all media that has possibilities for us and use that list repeatedly to try to bring us to the attention of the nation through a media list. And that would include cable access, regular cable, radio, and television, newspapers, magazines, and use that. Try to develop it with email because it's much less costly, you can do it more quickly. And back that up with matters of local concern. So if I could have people from occupying Wall Street go into a town in each state, then we could have local publicity in each state, separate and apart from any national publicity. So I would like to try to create jobs in each state by using volunteers and showing them how they can actually create jobs for themselves and the town, and to publicize that, to create videos and send links to the media so that they can see them and perhaps broadcast them. It's got to be a media blitz bias, backed up with appearances and creating local content. At least that's one important part of what I would do.
All right. Mr. Gary.
As I said earlier, my fondness is for ballot drives, and the biggest help we can give any local party is make sure the candidates are on the ballot. And that's a two-step process. You have to find the candidates, and you have to have ballot access. There is a certain amount of mystique to having a presidential candidate helping out the local party, even if you're not famous nationwide. When you're walking out collecting petitions with your local people, and you can say, well, our presidential candidate is here helping, that creates a certain amount of excitement. And in Texas, in December, we're facing a deadline for having our candidates on the ballot. of January 1st or 2nd, I guess it is, that we're now seeking candidates. And we're planning on having like to put on a presidential debate in December for the primary purpose of encouraging people to run as libertarians. And we want to build a party. I think Lee and I are in complete agreement on that, is that it's not about us, it's about getting the party built. And we need to lean heavily on you is to tell us, what do you need? What do you want from us? Because you know your local situation much better than we do.
It's interesting because that was the trick question, and you all understood it was the trick question. All right, now my last one, and then we're going to have a short break, and I'm going to hopefully get some really good questions from the audience, because these guys are here to answer questions, and they've in effect been doing an interview for you guys for the last 30, 40 minutes. I think everyone now knows a little bit about what you're doing, but how is your campaign organized? Do you have representatives in states? Are you running it from one location? Do you have, what kind of organization does your campaign have, and how will it look when you get to the convention? We're going to start this round with Mr. Pearson.
My campaign organization is thin at this moment. I'm trying to develop people, and I'm going to rely upon the 99%, hopefully. But at this moment, not being nominated, it's more difficult to have a national campaign. But I envision having a state coordinator. I envision expanding and having people specializing in website development and blog marketing, but I can't pay for it at this moment, and I will be in a better position if I get the nomination, and it will be a full national campaign, but I do not have that organization right now.
All right. Mr. Garrett.
As far as a formal organization is concerned, I have very few people, but as informal organization, I have quite a few more. Most of them are in Texas or in San Antonio, to where I can meet with them several times a month, and we can bounce ideas off of each other and see where we're getting. I've got my treasurer is out of San Antonio. Our local county chairman has been very supportive, and I've got several other people in the state that are helping out. I do have some state coordinators in other states, but a lot of it is the informal contact of people who contact us always with suggestions, comments, and that's very helpful. We'll go into Las Vegas in May of 2012 with probably a couple dozen people that will be helping out, and it's just getting the word out at the convention. Conventions are fun. Everybody needs to be going to them.
All right. Mr. Wright, you obviously agree conventions are going to be fun.
Oh, yeah. I'm still waiting to go to my first one when I'm not running for something. I can just be a regular delegate. But you say organization, and for whatever reason, it comes to my mind. Years ago, I worked for a construction company, and one Christmas, my wife did cross-stitch. She cross-stitched him an organizational chart for the company. And on that chart, it said me, and right below it, it said everybody else. Well, now, I'd like to tell you that that's the way it is, but surprisingly enough, it's not. I have a campaign manager that lives wherever he needs to live to do this campaign. I have a treasurer that lives in North Carolina, assistant treasurer in Illinois. I've got a videographer here that's from North Carolina. I've got a number of not necessarily state coordinators. I've concentrated more on getting like regional coordinators, someone that is good for a particular geographical region. So we've got several of those, and some more state people out in the western states helping us. And we've got the whole Libertarian Party to help us. I welcome anybody that wants to help put out this message not necessarily to help this campaign necessarily, but to put out a good libertarian message in the next election. Give people a true choice, a chance. People in America cannot vote for liberty and freedom if libertarians are not on the ballot. That's why it's so important for us, top down, to give people a true choice so that they can exercise their freedom. Choice is the metric of freedom. And it's too bad that you got more freedom in a McDonald's than you do in a ballot box. You got more freedom at your local car lot than you do at the ballot box. You have more choices. That's what we should be offering people, a choice, a chance. Let's do it together.
All right, thank you. What I'm going to do is, hopefully, a lot of people are writing down questions. What I like to do is stop recording for a few minutes, let the candidates stretch their legs, because you've been sitting there talking to us and talking to the thousands of libertarians that should be watching this when it's put up online. And so we'll close this for a few minutes. I'm going to get some questions, and then we're going to really get into the politics. Thank you. All right, I want to welcome you back. This feels like the old days when I did radio. They see you, but they don't see me. All right, this time we're getting a whole bunch of questions here. I'm going to throw out the obvious questions like, no, I'm not going to ask that question. We're going to randomly ask questions from the audience. Some of these will be directed to all of you. So a couple of them are directed to a particular candidate. If I do that, I will ask that candidate first and allow the other candidates to rebut. Now, who did we last start with the last time? We started with Mr. Pearson. We'll start again with Mr. Gary in answering the first question. I'm going to randomly shuffle them.
Stuart.
Yes, ma'am.
There's another question.
Okay. Well, we can. All right. We're going to start with these, and then we'll go from there. All right. The first question, and the first question selected randomly, is directed to a candidate. This is a question directed to Mr. Pearson. Or is it Pearson or Person?
Pearson.
Pearson. Given that the Occupy Wall Street movement seems to lack organization and tends to be very anti-capitalist, is that movement really compatible with libertarianism?
Well, they're against crony capitalism, and they want jobs, and they wouldn't object if a capitalist offered them a legitimate job. So I think that it's a little bit too much to say that they are anti-capitalism. If you have a capitalist that creates legitimate jobs, I think these people would take a job, and they're looking for jobs, and I think that we ought to associate with them because we can provide them with a means of getting jobs.
Would I assume the two of you would like to answer? Mr. Gary? If you care to comment, you don't have to.
My perception is that the Occupy movement would not be fertile ground for fine libertarians. It's I haven't taken a lot of interest in following their every movement.
Mr. Wrights?
Well, the greatest divide I have with what I know of the Occupy movement is I understand the anger and the frustration, but they're railing against what caused the problem, and yet at the same time asking what caused the problem fix the problem. Government has caused a lot of these problems, and I don't think we should look to government to fix the problems because nothing ever gets fixed that way.
Okay. All right. Now the next one is to everyone. We'll start with Mr. Gary with this question. Now I'm going to assume that the preface to this is after you end your term in office as president. But the question is, what are you planning to do after the campaign ends? How will you continue to help the party grow? Mr. Gary.
Continuing to do what we did all the way through the campaign, build the local parties, build us. The county parties are the most important things. And after the election, should I be elected, it's going to be a whirlwind of activity because there'll be briefings out the kazoo of the government. Every agency is going to want to tell you how important they are, and yeah, you can cut all the others, but we're the most important agency in the entire government. Well, don't think so.
All right. Mr. Rice?
Well, I assume that the question is what we will do after the campaign's over, not just the nomination campaign, but the campaign itself.
Correct.
And I'll start by what Mr. Gary said. Just I'll continue to do what I've always done. I have other projects besides running for office in the Libertarian Party and within the Libertarian movement. Of course, for the last 12 years, I've run one of the more well-known Libertarian blogs, web magazine, as we started years ago, called Liberty for All. I will continue to do that into perpetuity. Continue to work. Right now I live in Texas. I'm the county chair there, and I sit on the state committee along with Mr. Gary. I will continue those efforts and try to work and affect where I live, like I should, like a good activist. And I believe that most of my staff will be doing the same thing. And mentioning the staff, I'm embarrassed. I'm glad I got a few seconds left at the end of this question. I'm not trying to skirt the question, but the last question in the last round was organization. And I guess when you have so many people helping you, it's easy to forget someone. And I forgot someone very important, my press secretary, Brian Urban, who was in the room with me, a longtime friend. Can't believe that I forgot him. And I will be ashamed from now on but that I didn't mention him as one of the first people. But again, we have to continue to do what we've always done and unite ourselves together and do it together.
All right.
I have been working prior to this, way before I even thought that I would do anything like be up here running for office. I've been trying to create prosperity in at least one town in America. I had Vermilion, Ohio. The mayor in Vermilion, Ohio was working with me. She wasn't reelected, and that sort of killed the deal. I've been to other towns. I'm looking for a town now. I will continue trying to get prosperity brought into a town. It can be created, and if we don't do it, we're going to be in real trouble. But it is easy to create. We need a team of 10 people, knock on doors. We can create prosperity, and if that occurs, then everyone else, all other towns will demand the same thing, and it's really a grassroots approach. And the net result is that every single elected position will have candidates. You can go in there and get candidates that way easily. You will have no problem. If you go in there to create prosperity, you're going to have an abundance, an overabundance of candidates, which is what you're looking for.
All right, the next question is actually, I don't know whether it was two questions or a two-part question. I think it's almost better as a two-part question. On what issues will you attack President Obama, and how will who wins the GOP nomination affect your plan of attack against the GOP? And we'll start with Mr. Rice.
I'm not at war. I mean that. The last
So you
thing.
were offended by the word attack?
No, I wasn't offended by it, but we need to be careful about it because that's what is wrong with politics now. You got two sides that are hungry for power, that attack each other all the time, and will do everything in their power to keep anybody else out of the fight, and that's us. Now, attacking is a bad word. It's something that we need to stop doing. We need to stop attacking each other and attacking everybody else. We need to present solutions. We need to show how the administration that's in there now, what's wrong with it, and how we can make it better. Now, some would say that's negative, that's attacking. Well, you can't change something that's wrong without being a little negative. It's wrong in the first place, that's a negative. Changing that becomes a positive. And I think we're much better off, rather than attacking and going with it with that warrior mentality, go with compassion in our heart and understand that we need to educate people. We face some of the same problems that the founders faced during the Revolution. One of the greatest things they faced was people didn't know how to be free. They'd been under a king for generations. All they knew was how to take orders and how to do what you're told. They didn't understand how it would be more valuable, how their lives would be better, how they would prosper with freedom, individual choice. That's what we need to educate the American people now.
Okay, I'm going to take liberty as the moderator and ask you once again what the question was. If you could give me maybe 30 seconds of what issues would you address about, I'll use that instead of word attack, about President Obama or how will the GOP nomination
The same issues
affect?
I'm running on, the war, and we got to fix our spending problem. Those are the two biggest things. We got to fix the budget. We got to trim the budget down from volumes to about the size of a comic book and fix government so that it fits inside the Constitution.
Okay, Mr. Pearson.
I agree that we need to do that. On the other hand, what I'm proposing is actually doable. We can create jobs, and President Obama doesn't have the faintest idea in the world of how to do it. He talks about tax credits, for example. That doesn't create jobs. Any person that's a small business owner knows that that's an absolute waste of money. It's the big companies that will take that and apply it to jobs that they already have. You're not going to create any net new jobs with the Obama plan. Giving veterans favoritism does not create a brand new job. The veterans deserve jobs, but it doesn't create any new jobs. So Obama has no idea in the world, and we do. We do know how to create jobs. It's got to be through deregulation. Crony capitalism doesn't want that, and we've got to address that issue. The issue that creation of jobs is through deregulation. If we can get the deregulation, we have to allow small business to advertise for money, where it's illegal. It's called an illegal public offering right now. We have to eliminate that regulation. We have to make it easier for payroll. We have to eliminate the licensing of education so we can train people to go to work. We can create jobs, and they don't know how, but we do.
Okay, I think I'm gonna read the question again, because I don't think anyone addressed the second part. You both addressed the first part. And to Mr. Gary, on what issues will you attack President Obama? How will who wins the GOP nomination affect your plan of attack against the GOP? Mr. Gary.
Well, I think Mr. Wrights did answer both of those, and I agree wholeheartedly with him. We cannot attack either one of those groups as well as they can attack each other. Let's let the pros attack each other and show the American public that we have reasonable solutions, that we're reasonable people, and that we would be a good alternative choice. We will demonstrate our superiority in bringing individual freedom and prosperity to this country, and let them destroy each other. I have no particular interest in ganging up on one group or the other. And as far as who will receive the nomination, if I was a betting man, I would put my money on Mitt Romney getting the GOP nomination, and that wouldn't change my stance one bit. Those two people will spend their entire campaign trying to demolish each other, and I wish them both luck.
All right, let's see. We'll start.
I didn't respond. You were giving a chance for all three to respond again?
Well, I was just trying to redirect the question. I mean, if you have another comment you'd like to add,
well, yes.
it's not gonna hurt anything.
If Romney wins, Romney destroys jobs. He sends jobs overseas with Bain Capital. I mean, the public doesn't really know that, but we ought to address that and let it be known. That's an issue. If Romney it runs, that we have to address that issue. But it's jobs, and these people do not create jobs; they destroy jobs.
I think, Mr. Wright, do you want to comment on that?
Well, the reason I answered the question as I did is because I happen to agree with one thing that Pat Buchanan said. I don't agree with very much, but I do quote him in one instance. Democrats and Republicans are two wings on the same bird of prey. There's not a dime worth of difference between them. It doesn't matter who their candidates are. We already know the kind of policies they're going to give us, and they're unacceptable.
All right. See, now I drew some answers. We're getting some blood here. All right. Now this next question.
We are?
No, those are good answers. I liked it, and I think everyone watching is going to learn something from your answers. I mean, did you guys like those answers?
Yes.
Yes. You see, we're getting some excitement here. Now this one. I don't know.
I knew it would happen.
This is another one of these questions that I got to ask because it was stuck in front of me. What's more important, becoming president or bringing positive attention to state and local libertarian candidates and their campaigns? And I think you guys already answered this one, but if you'd care to start, Mr. Pearson.
I think the president has a much greater impact on the country than just a few candidates that are running at a lower level. I think we ought to and we get much better attention for our issues if we're a presidential candidate. So I have to go and say that the presidential candidate is really very important. And if you don't have a presidential candidate, I don't think that you have as much sway in your efforts.
Okay. All right, next, Mr. Garrett. What's more important, becoming president or bringing positive attention to state and local libertarian candidates in their campaigns? And I know it's a loaded question, but I didn't write it.
Without a doubt, the local candidates. All politics is local. It all starts local. Even should one of us be elected president, we're at the mercy of the bureaucracy for the briefings that we're going to get. We have to stand up and make our own decisions, which is going to be difficult, but doable. Absolutely, local candidates. I think I've alluded to that in earlier questions.
Mr. Wrights.
There's nothing more important than building this party. And you can't build but from one way, ground up. You can't start at the roof and build it down. Like I said before, you got to have that foundation. That foundation is our local parties, is our local candidates. All our candidates, presidential, all the way down, are our ambassadors. They deliver our message to the American people. And president's only one guy. There is, strength in numbers. I'm reminded of my friend in Florida, Doug Kipple, wonderful quote. He said, if we only were able to elect a few libertarians to certain boards or bureaucracies, it would be akin to having a designated driver in a room full of drunk drivers.
I like that.
That's what we need to be focusing on. We need to be that designated driver for all those drunks out there that are already there.
All right, now this next one, it'll be starting with Mr. Gary, and again, since I'm not editing these, I'm going to ask it, and it's, okay, it's being widely reported that Iran is close to building a nuclear weapon. Should the U.S. intervene?
No.
It took about 4 seconds.
The way the popular thought on that is probably, should we attack? Should we destroy their facilities? And isn't that war? And we're opposed to war? No, I don't think we should. I think we should have a strong defense to be able to annihilate them if they get out of hand. But no, preemptive, no.
All right, Mr. Rice.
The biggest problem that we face in this country as far as our wars is sticking our nose in everybody's business. We are the nosy neighbor on your block. Somebody move in next door to you, and as soon as they get there, they're in your business every day over your fence. Pick out a tree in the corner of your yard and say, that tree just don't look right. He says, I'll bring over my chainsaw this weekend. I'll fix that for you. Well, no, I don't want you over here. No, you don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. I mean, just not only nosy, but going to tell you what to do. It's a little bit hypocritical for the country, the only country on the face of the earth that's ever used a nuclear weapon, to expect other people not to want them and to believe that we can keep everybody from having them. We're just going to cause more problems if we go try and tell people what to do with their own business. We need to start minding our own business, because we got a lot of problems here at home. These are the ones we need to fix and face, not everybody else's problems. We're not supposed to be the world's policemen. We're supposed to be good examples, shining examples of how freedom works.
Mr. Pearson, Iran, nuclear weapon, do we intervene?
It's a serious problem, and I'm not suggesting that I would say intervention. What I see here is that the world could come to an end through nuclear holocaust. And I see also that there's a likelihood that Israel could do something. What happens if war develops, not because of us, but Israel goes in and attacks, and then what do we do? What is the policy at that point? If Israel is attacked because Israel attacked first. I think that's an issue that will arise here.
All right. Okay, the next question. Now, I'm going to read this the way it's written. Obviously, it could be any other choice of issues. But what will you say to the media? And I believe who we're starting with on this one is Mr. Wrights. What will you say to the media when they accuse you of being... Should I actually ask this question?
I think you...
Okay. What will you say to the media when they accuse you of being a kook who wants to legalize drugs and prostitution?
Well, I began by telling them that they have been sadly and poorly educated as to what a libertarian is really all about, particularly on the war on drugs, a war that takes more lives than the drugs that they're fighting do. We learned from prohibition of alcohol what prohibition does. You can make a law telling people not to do anything, and they're going to do it if they want to do it. Laws don't stop people from doing things, and often they make it worse. Prohibition created the mafia. They created organized crime. They were nothing more than street gangs before alcohol made them rich and powerful men of the underworld. Children are dying in the schoolyards not because of the drugs, but because they're shooting each other over the drugs, because it's a black market. I'm for saving lives. I'm not for killing people. No, your children shouldn't be taking drugs. That's a bad thing. But it's up to you to make sure that they don't. It's not up to bureaucrats to try to come and run your life for you and raise your children for you. I'm against death. Prohibitions cause death.
Mr. Pearson.
Well, prohibition caused a JFK to become elected, sort of indirectly. Joe Kennedy amassed a fortune based upon running rum, from what I gather, and that enabled the Kennedy family to set up a dynasty. The drug people have dynasties. People are being paid off all over the world, and we're allowing that because drugs allow that. Because we have made it illegal, you create huge fortunes now in running these drugs. It's just prohibition all over again with the same result. Therefore, we ought to stop that and just legalize drugs.
Mr. Gary.
Well, I'm running for federal office. And that office is dictated what I can and cannot do by the Constitution of the United States. And 80 or 90 years ago, we recognized in this country, in order to prohibit a substance such as alcohol, it took a constitutional amendment. We have never amended the Constitution since then to allow us to prohibit whatever the heck we want to on the federal level. I want the national government to be constrained and reduced down to the size of that it will fit within the Constitution. I have no authority to continue the prohibitions.
All right. Next question. And I noticed that none of you all stuck on drugs. Nobody answered the media talking about prostitution, but we'll leave that for another day because we got good answers here. We're getting this is great.
Well,
the same issue.
The common, yeah, exactly. It's a victimless crime. You know, we put too many people in jail already for victimless crimes.
And speaking of victims, because I think they think of themselves as some, what will you tell the elderly in regards to the future of their Medicare? And I believe who do we start with this time? Mr. Wrights, thank you.
No, I started last time.
You started last time. Mr. Pearson.
If society can regroup and go back to where we were, where people are working and we have people taking care of each other, if we have less of the city society and have more where people care for each other, they have jobs, and you'll have a greater protection for the elderly people. As it is now, when you have the elderly in a city and nobody knows them, I mean, the people are going to, they have to have some kind of support, otherwise they're just going to rot and die. So I think that if we go back and create jobs and have a sustainable economy, that will lessen the pressure on the need for government support of the elderly.
Mr. Gary?
As a libertarian, I believe in the sanctity of contracts, and there certainly was, if not expressed, an implied contract that the elderly lived up to, that as they aged and have reached the age of getting Medicare, that they would receive it. I would not advocate reducing that to them, but that doesn't mean we can't be changing the program so that the younger people have a choice. And to get them off of that, there is, like I said earlier, there is no constitutional authority for the federal government to run a program such as Medicare, Social Security, or anything else.
Mr. Wright?
Well, Mr. Gary makes a good point, and it's one I've used in most of the debates that we've been in so far. We are libertarians, and we recognize contracts, legal contracts. And whether we like it or not, that's exactly what the U.S. government has done with every elderly person. Individually, somewhere along the line, they made an individual contract with that person. And we should honor those contracts. What we need to do, the solution is to stop making new contracts and make sure that people have the money, stop taking their money away from them and saying you're going to do something for them and then not doing it. Government can't protect you at the mall. You want to let that same group of people take care of you when you're too old to take care of yourself? No. You should be allowed to keep that money and put it forth in your future the own way you want to, and take care of yourself and depend on your family and friends, people that actually care about you. So yes, the elderly are a great concern, and I don't believe a libertarian candidate should jerk legal contracts out from under people, veterans, the elderly, whatever contracts we've made. But we got to stop spending to cure our debt problem, so we better stop making new contracts.
All right, I'm going to ask for an opinion. I think they already answered this, don't you? No?
I'm not certain.
All right, well, I'm going to ask it. I think really you guys already indirectly answered this, but to Mr. Gary, to start, how will you explain what needs to be done about Social Security to young people? How will you explain what needs to be done about Social Security to young people?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we covered that. It's give them a choice. Don't lock them into a system that obviously is doomed. It's I'm not sure exactly how you.
Doomed is a good word.
Yeah. How you explain that in great detail in a minute and a half.
Well, I mean, it's the same answer I just gave. Stop making new contracts. Because they're contracts you can't believe in. We already know that about the Social Security system. I mean, they've even been so blatant as to admit that it's broke. They done took all the money and spent it somewhere else, but they're going to give it back to us. Don't worry. It'll be there when you get ready for it. Stop lying to the young people. Stop telling them something that you know is not true. Stop telling them they can work all their lives and then the government will give them a check that's worth something when they retire. We know it's a lie. We got to stop telling the young people lies. They're smarter than you think they are. And they're getting a lot brighter because of the internet, and they're paying attention. I know just from my own experiences in my own campaign, young people are, and they ask good questions. Some of them are hard. I got to sit down and figure out how I'm going to answer them sometimes. It's not just sending them an autographed picture or getting a nice hello from them. Stop lying to them, and they'll respect us for it.
Mr. Pearson.
If everyone had a job, then what we've talked about would make more sense. But if we have a declining number of people that are working who then don't even make any contribution at all to Social Security and aren't earning any money, how do we take care of them? I'm just throwing that out to something that I would have to consider. Maybe they should work, maybe create opportunities that will, not government, just private enterprise, creating opportunities for people to work in exchange for health care, because people have been doing that for years. They get a job where the benefits are great. There's no pay, but they have great benefits. People have been doing that for years. Maybe that's part of the problem, but it is a problem.
I'm just going to state there was one question that as moderator I determined was inappropriate to ask, so I'm not going to ask it. All right, the next question, I got distracted there for a second of who starts. Mr. Wright starts. All right. Do you want the big piece of paper or the little one? We got two last questions. You get that. Which one do you want first?
Look out for the little ones.
Yeah. No, I like the little ones. It's kind of like out of a fortune cookie. I like the looks of it.
Okay, then here's the big little question, because it's a big one. What's your economic plan?
Well, this is another area where the American people have been lied to a lot. To think that we can elect one person and he can have effect over the economy is kind of a dream. It's kind of something that we sell people, that one person can fix the economy. The only people that can fix the economy are the American people themselves. That's what the economy is. Best thing we can do for the economy is quit wasting the resources that we have. The valuable resources and precious lives that we send overseas, if we would just save money on that, we'd at least have the money to take care of our problems here at home. But the main thing to cure our economy is, I agree with both my colleagues. First of all, is deregulation. The less regulation you have, the more jobs there are created. The more regulation you have, that squelches jobs. That stimulates the economy. Allow small business people to work, to hire new people. That stimulates the economy. Government is just not supposed to be doing that. I don't see anything in the Constitution that says the president is supposed to stimulate the economy. He's supposed to control the purse strings of the country and be a good steward of that money. And I think we should be focusing on that. And we get a president in office that'll stay out of everybody's way, our economy will improve.
Mr. Pearson.
Targeted deregulation, so that rather than trying to advocate just get rid of all regulation, it's not feasible. You're going to have so many objectors to that take it from the other approach. Have this rule and that rule and that rule, and you can create millions of jobs. So on one hand, we can create millions of jobs with very limited deregulation. I would like more deregulation, but at least we can create millions of jobs that way, and we have to stop spending. So we not only, and reduce taxes. So it's a combination of both, and I agree with the others here.
Mr. Gary.
First thing I would do is a kind of a two-pronged effort. Said I would cut out this horse hockey about too big to fail. How about me? I'm too small to fail.
Are you sure?
Yeah. But I'm not looking for another handout from the government. And these huge corporations that don't want to be controlled by market reality and want us as taxpayers, when we refuse to buy their product because we don't like them, but then we have to pay for their bailout, that's got to be stopped. It'll also slow down the deficits, and that'd be the first thing I'd do. And
Okay, we have, I think we got two more questions here. And I'm going to pick the order because the last question is one that has to be asked, but, we'll get to that because I got a feeling that I know the answer from everyone. But this is an interesting question. Al Gore lost the 2000 election by losing his home state, Tennessee. How do you plan to campaign with the presidential college in mind? You mean the electoral college in mind? How do you plan to campaign with the electoral college in mind? And we're starting this time with, who did we start with last time? We started with you last time. Mr. Pearson?
My feeling is that we have to try to get what publicity we can, and that trying to do it from that standpoint of the electoral college, it doesn't have as much viability as just trying to get any publicity anywhere, any way we can. And I would target our money and work on getting the maximum amount of publicity, irrespective of the Electoral College. I think that really drops out as a significant factor.
Mr. Gary?
As I said in my opening remarks, I think that's a bit of an unrealistic expectation as to that we should focus on the Electoral College. I doubt seriously that we'll be faced with that problem. But the way I'd face it as far as campaigning, and I've said it before, I want to make sure we're on a ballot in all 50 states. And to address the Electoral College is to have every opportunity for electoral votes that we can possibly get. And that's to be on the ballot in all 50 states and 7 more if we ever find out what they are. And, you know, and what most people, but I imagine everybody here is well informed, but our candidate has received electoral votes in the past. Our first candidate in 1972 received 1 electoral vote, and I don't recall he was only on the ballot in, 2 states?
I'm not sure.
You know, 2 states. So things can happen. Will they? Probably not, but they can.
Mr. Rice?
Well, the Electoral College is made up of people, just like every other voter. Now, I'm going to carry this message to all the voters, whether they're in the Electoral College or if they're not. We have a message that's for everyone. And we need to deliver this message like we're not afraid of it. We shouldn't be tailoring it to certain specific groups, and particularly smaller groups than we should be focusing on. We need to be focusing on America as a whole and educating them, helping them understand libertarians better so we don't get those crazy kind of questions that Stewart threw at us, a minute ago, drug war and prostitution and all the other nonsense. They're just looking for a way to make us marginalized. We need to be proud about what we are. Tell them what we are. Stop defending ourselves about what somebody else says we are and tell people just exactly what we are. I've said it before and I mean it. I'm not interested in this campaign. I'm not interested in going around and telling people, feeling them out and telling them what I think they want to hear. I'm interested in saying things that need to be heard by this country. And that includes the Electoral College.
All right, now, I know I'll not make it out of here alive if I don't ask this last question, because I did say I would ask it. I did refuse to ask one question because I felt it was an insulting question to ask. This one I have to ask, and if you guys, throw coffee at me, I won't be offended. But we'll start, Mr. Gary. If Ron Paul wins the GOP nomination, and you win the question, right? And you win the LP nomination, will you drop out and support Paul, given that he will have a better chance of winning? Would you feel guilty if you spoiled the race and Obama won?
Hell no.
Now, please, I'm just the messenger.
Well, as I said earlier, my objective is to build the party, and I absolutely do not see how dropping out, if I was the nominee, would help build the Libertarian Party. I doubt seriously that we're going to be faced with that problem, but it is possible.
Mr. Rice?
Well, I'm not going to speculate on the likelihood of something happening into the future. I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not a soothsayer. I don't care who wins the GOP nomination. I'm doing what Ron Paul won't do. We all are. We're running as libertarians. We're representing our party. Now, I may have great respect for Ron Paul, I do. But he made his choice and I made mine. Like I told you before, this is my home. LP's my home. And I'm not a libertarian because somebody else says I'm a libertarian. I'm a libertarian because I say so. And I'm the only one that gets to wear the cloak that I choose to wear. Ron Paul's made the same decision. And no matter how much I respect him, he's picked the cloak that he's going to wear. I don't hold that against him. But I'm not going to step aside for any man. I'm going to help deliver a libertarian message. It'd be a great thing if he did win, then we'd have 2 people on the ballot screaming about liberty and freedom everywhere they went. And am I going to feel guilty if somebody else wins because I didn't drop out? No. Your vote is your vote. I'm not taking Ron Paul votes away from him. I'm not taking Obama votes away from him. People give you your vote. That's the most precious political gift they can give you. And it's an individual gift given one at a time. And it doesn't belong to anybody but you. There's no such thing as a wasted vote unless you don't cast it.
Mr. Pearson?
Absolutely not. I would not withdraw. I would continue, and even more so, and be very pleased if Ron Paul ran. That would be fantastic. I would hope that he would take the message that we have. And in fact, the other day in New York, I slipped him my first 3 are free plan, hoping that he would adopt it and run with it, because I think that our role is to be able to create new ideas and get them out there. And I would hope that Ron Paul would take some of our ideas and run with them. But I certainly would not want to destroy the party by saying you have no candidate. So I would not at all withdraw.
All right. I believe they've stopped handing me questions, which means...
They're just tired of hearing us talk.
Well, they're either tired of hearing you talk.
I'm tired of hearing you talk.
I know.
Well, I want to say this, gentlemen, before we go to closing remarks, I want to say that I, for one, am having a much harder time making a decision now because I've heard a lot of great answers, and this is becoming actually a more difficult decision because this is fun. I'm looking forward to watching it because this is going to be better watching it a second time. We started with Mr. Gary. How about if we reverse it, the order, and start closing remarks with Mr. Pearson? If you'll humor me for 1 second, I got to change the timer here so that. But while I'm doing this, did this work? Was this at all helpful?
Very
Wonderful.
good. We liked it. Yeah.
Tilt it up a little bit more because I'm getting a lot of glare.
You're getting a lot. Okay, all right. But this was all right. So if we can improve on this system, but it's a possibility.
Oh, it's great.
This is good. Very
All right.
good. Yeah.
Mr. Pearson, closing remarks.
Okay. The Libertarian Party is the only party that has the answer to the country's economic problem, as I see it. On one hand, we have to get rid of war. We have to get rid of we have to make legalization of drugs so that we can stop that war. But we also have deregulation as the way that the economy can really move forward and create the jobs that we need. We need to have a deregulation of education, higher education, in order to make it possible to have the maximum number of jobs. We don't know it, but it's really, as I see it, that we have regulated ourselves out of our economy. By having too much regulation, we no longer have jobs, and we have got to identify where that is taking place. And I see it in the fact that small business can't raise money by advertising or using YouTube videos. It's illegal. It's an illegal public offering. We have too much regulation of the payroll, so that we need to reduce the regulation. Don't eliminate payroll, but just have a Head Start program for small business. The first 3 employees are deemed independent contractors. The first 3 are free, and you'll create millions of jobs. And then if you deregulate higher education and vocationals, post-secondary vocational education, you'll find that we will be able to train the people that small business can use to expand dramatically and eliminate the companies that are too big to fail. They're too big to fail now because we aren't growing in small business. We could be growing, but we have stopped because of all this regulation. We have to end the regulation of small business, at least as I've defined it. That's a doable objective, I think.
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. Mr. Wrights.
Well, I can't imagine that there's anything left that I can say that I haven't said already, other than how much I really do appreciate South Carolina having us and giving us this opportunity. It's been a true joy to sit with a room full of libertarians. It's my most favorite thing to do because I always feel at home. I always feel like my family is around me. No matter what our differences are, I know most things we agree on, and those are the things that we need to focus on. Going forward, let's set good examples. The people in this room are the diehard people. You stayed. You stayed late. Everything was over with, and this was all there was, and you came. You don't know how much that means to us candidates. It means a lot to have friendly, intelligent faces looking back at you, knowing that they're rooting for you. They want to hear a good answer. They want to be educated, and they want something that they can take to their friends, to their family. So there is nothing left for me to say tonight except thank you. Join me in saying, I am not at war. Let's embrace each other and embrace America with a wonderful message that we can give them of compassion, concern, and peace.
Thank you, Mr. Wrights. Mr. Gary.
Well, I'd like to try to wrap several of the questions all together on this, is that if you haven't attended a national convention yet, or even if you have, there's a potential of you having a lot of fun in Las Vegas in May.
It's Las Vegas after all.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about being down on the Strip. I don't find that being much fun. But my first convention was in 1983 in New York City, and it was an absolute certainty that the gentleman running for the presidential nomination was going to win on the first ballot with probably 95% of the vote. I was at a cocktail party, and not knowing anybody, of course my choice was to find an attractive woman to go talk to, because I had my choice of whoever to introduce myself to. So I talked to a young lady from Michigan, and she asked me, "Who are you supporting for president?" And I said, "This is a joke, isn't it?" Because Gene Burns had it tied up. He was going to...
Who?
Gene Burns.
That was a rhetorical question.
And she says, "Haven't you heard? Gene withdrew 2 weeks ago." And I said, "No, I hadn't heard." And I asked her, who's running? Who's running? You know, who's running? And she said, well, she told me the two people. One I didn't know, and what little bit I'd heard about him, I knew I couldn't support him. The other one I thought was a ho-hum candidate. So I asked her, I said, "How old are you?" And she said, "I'll be old enough 2 weeks before the election." And off we went. That was my first presidential campaign that I was involved with.
Who was that?
Mary Ruart, Dr. Mary Ruart. There were two of us. And, you know, the stories about the smoke-filled rooms and the arm twisting behind the scene, that absolutely happens. It is an experience that everybody should have. But as a consequence, and what I want to do in this campaign is get the young people involved so they can have similar good things happen to them at the convention. And one of these days, one of y'all will be up here.
And I'm going to be asking questions.
Dr. Ruart has had fabulous effect, I think, on the Libertarian Party, and I'd like to proudly think that I had a little something to do with that. And I know Lee probably shares the same sentiments, having been her campaign manager in 2008. What will one of y'all do? I don't know. But I look forward to finding out. So get to Las Vegas, get involved with somebody's campaign, and if you don't like anybody, campaign for none of the above. You'll have fun. The more involved you are, the more fun you'll have. And that's what I want to have, is fun in Las Vegas, and have everybody else have fun too.
And what happens in Las Vegas stays there, except who we nominate.
God, I hope so.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And to back that up, what happens in Washington, D.C. should stay in D.C.
Thank you, gentlemen. This has been a great pleasure, and hopefully we'll get a good recording of this and get it up on the internet, and let people in other states see that we have candidates who are in this for the marathon, who are going for this. It is 6 months. I believe it's 6 months from this weekend, isn't it?
December, January, February, March.
6 months from last week.
6 months from last week, and we're in the last 6 months.
Now you get
And-
down up closer to 5.
Well, 6 months shy a week. Let's not start thinking in terms of shrinking it too much.
All these numbers.
Good numbers, but you know what? You guys, we'll look forward to seeing all of you, and everyone has a straw ballot. We're going to announce those results. We're going to take a ballot of people who are going to be delegates and of everybody else in the room, although I think I better be fair. I better not let the campaign staff have, because that would sort of sway it. But you know what? I think I'll even give each of our candidates a ballot and let the 3 of them each vote, because you were here and you heard the debate and heard your opponents speak. With that, I guess we'll wrap it up from Columbia, South Carolina, and I hope everyone who sees this comes to Vegas.
You're here.
Thank you all.